My name is Gary Hughes. I will be presenting in English. Thanks for your patience with the clumsiness. I'd also like to thank those of you who are here. We have a rather intimate group. It's not quite the large turnout that I was hoping for, but I'm really glad that people have shown up for this webinar to launch the home land-based geoengineering toolkit. And I'd like to offer some perspective from what's happening in California around these speculative technologies, and also some insights on the narratives that are being used to normalize a future reliance on technology to respond to climate change. Really quickly, Biofuelwatch is an international organization, and we work under the fiscal sponsorship of Global Justice Ecology Project. And this is my opportunity to say thank you to all of the organizations and Hands Off Mother Earth for your participation in this opportunity for Biofuelwatch to be a part of this collaborative effort, but also to say thanks to Anne and Heather and everyone from Global Justice Ecology Project that provide so much for our organization to be able to continue this work. Now, let me start in California just by really painting a quick picture of what's actually going on in the landscape. Remember, California is host to what was and could be the most carbon-dense temperate rainforest ecosystem in the world, and that's the redwoods. But the truth of the matter is, despite rhetoric of sustainability and certification schemes like the Forest Stewardship Council, California's forests are being subject to constant industrial degradation. This is a Google Map photo of the upper northwest corner of the state in Humboldt County, and you can see the little target that actually starts to expose the clear cuts you can see from space. And just north of that is a dark green area that is actually the Redwood National Park. It's a World Heritage Area. This is a treasured, protected area that's crucial to climate protection in the state. Nevertheless, even as interests in Sacramento talk so much about carbon dioxide removal, they continue to permit clear cutting right up to the boundary of this park. The clear cutting is nonstop. It's small patches, and they take the forest, a young forest, back down to the ground. Less than 3% of the original redwood temperate rainforest ecosystem remains. But what's even more remarkable is that there is even less actual, quote unquote, second growth forest. So there are more than 95% of the acres that belong to the redwood forest that have been logged more than twice. And just to drive this home one last time, a couple last slides, again, looking at an area just north of the Redwood National Park, man and the biosphere protected reserve, World Heritage Site, that between 2016 and then 5 years later in 2020 was subject to heavy clear cutting. Now, I mean, look at this again. And what we're seeing here in California, though, is that these realities of what's actually happening on the ground are being totally obfuscated because of a narrative, an ongoing narrative about natural and working lands and nature-based solutions, and how some miracle is going to lead California to carbon neutrality because of all the carbon sequestration that will happen in the land. Even at the same time, though, a lot of those clear cuts that we saw in the previous slides were permitted by timber review, whereby actual climate denial language was being used in the timber harvest plans. So the timber aristocracy, the biggest landowners in the state, are denying the existence of climate change. They're logging the forests into submission, and at the same time, then they're participating with the decision makers and policy makers in the state to distribute a natural and working lands paradigm. Let's take a look really briefly then at a document from 2022. This is the scoping plan that's designed by the California Air Resources Board. This is supposed to be the roadmap for how California will respond to climate change. And because of the way legislation and executive decisions from the executive administration have worked, carbon neutrality is now the goal in California. But we can see what makes up the tools for getting to carbon neutrality. NWL is natural and working lands, carbon capture and sequestration. We know that's not geoengineering, but it's very tied in to geoengineering. And then there's carbon dioxide removal, including natural and working lands carbon sequestration, direct air capture, and BECCS. And by 2045, the state is anticipating to be achieving carbon neutrality, relying heavily upon technologies like BECCS, direct air capture, and again, this talk about natural and working lands. Again, from the scoping plan, just to see the focus on carbon dioxide removal includes DAC technology, BECCS to produce hydrogen or other fuels. Again, these are bioenergy unicorns that have been baked in now to the narratives about how California is going to respond to climate change, and as well, once again, the natural and working land sequestration, NWL. How did we get here? How did it turn out that natural and working lands became a Trojan horse for carbon removal and geoengineering in California? And it goes back a way. Governor Brown made carbon neutrality a goal for California in 2018. Then all of the focus on offsets and sequestration began to morph into the promotion of mechanical sequestration, direct air capture, essentially geoengineering. And then you began to hear private sector stakeholders as well as agency officials begin to speak about technology and nature as existing on a spectrum, that we can manipulate nature just as we manipulate technology, and we'll do it together to create new responses. And we saw that with the Getting to Neutral report from the Lawrence Livermore National Lab that really promotes forest-intensive bioenergy-based carbon dioxide removal as the pathway for getting to carbon neutrality. There was a bill that was passed some years ago, a natural and working lands bill, but that included lots of promotion of direct air capture, carbon mineralization, which we also know as enhanced weathering that has appeared again and again, as well as carbon capture, use and sequestration. This was a clear example of natural and working lands being used as a Trojan horse to promote geoengineering. We've seen nature-based solutions emerge again and again in California, a refusal in California to recognize that nature-based solutions that is a very controversial concept when we're talking about climate justice. But then, of course, the discussion in Sacramento very easily merged the idea of technology-based solutions into the concepts around nature-based solutions. And all of this built into California's now legislative set goals to achieve net zero. Then the California Air Resources Board, through mechanisms like the low carbon fuel standard and their scoping plan processes, elevated the study of getting to neutral, and as we've seen earlier, really promoted carbon capture in the form of BECCS. And what we're seeing now in California is a full spectrum, full solutions paradigm. We're being assaulted by markets. Right now, we're witnessing in California a very, very weak industry-friendly amendment package being presented to support the refiners and fossil fuel interests in the state. We're seeing biofuels, nature-based solutions, BECCS, CDR, DAC, CCS, CCUS. It's all coming at us at an incredible pace. Biochar is a part of it. And this idea, now we have agencies who are promoting that we're going to respond to climate and wildfire because we're going to start to develop new recipes for concrete where we bring biochar into the concrete. And then to really make sure that we understand the role of Silicon Valley and the massive amounts of money that are floating in California and then been distributed globally This outfit, Lower Carbon Capital, is Chris Sacca's investment platform, ostensibly for climate change. We're talking about climate policy by billionaires for billionaires. Well, Lower Carbon Capital is not only investing in the research of solar geoengineering, they're also investing directly in companies like Charm that try to pursue carbon dioxide removal through injecting a bio oil back underground, vaulted deep, burying biomass. And of course, Anne had just mentioned the company Living Carbon, based right here in the Bay, getting money from Lower Carbon Capital. But the narratives around all of this are some of the most insidious aspects of what California is doing on land-based geoengineering. And 5 years ago, we published a report where we really tried to discuss the difference between what might really be needed for responding to climate change and California's dependence on carbon capture. And we leveraged the Public Record Act to get hold of documents at the California Air Resources Board that weren't available to the public. And I wanted to share this with people here. One of the documents we got from the Air Resources Board was this messaging guide on carbon dioxide removal that had been developed to help the agency better convince the public that their push for geoengineering was something that people should be comfortable with, because they had found in doing the focus group that people were intuitively very concerned about the promotion of these technologies. And one of the things that they decided would be effective is to use imagery that compares the technology to trees, so that people will be softened up to the idea of geoengineering, because, well, we're really comfortable with the idea of trees. So I wanted to share this just so that folks can understand that it's not only the promotion of technologies like bioenergy with carbon capture and sequestration, it's the sophisticated manipulation of the messaging to help sell the idea of geoengineering that California has really led the way on. So we've had some success fighting back. There was a massive wood pellet export scheme that was being promoted here in California. Drax, one of the world's biggest promoters of negative emissions, was behind this project. And with an unprecedented coalition of rural and urban organizations, we were able to stop that wood pellet export scheme. And then lastly, with Hands Off Mother Earth, we really came together well last year as a piece of legislation moved its way through the legislature to promote carbon dioxide removal. There was a carbon dioxide removal purchase program bill, and it promoted direct air capture, BECCS, enhanced weathering, and marine carbon dioxide removal. We were able to put pressure on the governor. The governor vetoed this bill, but I'll be very sober and say I don't think it was really because of our campaign work, but it was an opportunity for us to push back on these commonly held narratives now. So thank you so much for your time, and thanks to everyone at Hands Off Mother Earth. And thank you. This is a really small group. It's really intimate, but it's an opportunity for us to share with each other. And I'm really honored to have been a part of the presentation.